Casey Anthony, well, she was born March 16th, 1986. She was born in Warren, Ohio. She was one of 2 children to her parents, Cindy and George Anthony. Now, Casey was said to be very energetic, and very intelligent from a young age. At some point, her family moved down to Orlando, Florida, which is, home of the Disney Worlds, but they have Disney World, SeaWorld, Universal Studios. Casey's father, he worked as a cop, and her mother worked as a home care nurse. And she had a brother named Lee, who was 4 years older. Or is 4 years older. As Casey got into her teenage years, it was said by friends and family that she had a weird pattern of lying. I shouldn't say weird. It's just some people do that and we don't know why. But she had a pattern of lying, She would lie about just the smallest things, that didn't even matter. Her parents would be like, hey, did you eat the leftovers in the fridge? And she'd be like, no, I didn't eat the leftovers. And they'd be like, well, then what are all those crumbs around your mouth? And she'd be like, I don't know. She was one of those people. She's lying about weird things. In high school, it was said that Casey, that's when she really started to completely push away from her family. Casey was once like the little girl who told her mom and dad everything. And then she became a teenager in high school, and that's when she just completely cut everybody off. She wanted nothing to do with her family. And even though she still lived at home, her family really didn't know much about her. So Casey became that friend or that person who always had to have a boyfriend or just be in a relationship. She didn't enjoy being single or just on her own, or maybe she just didn't know how to be without a partner, but she always had someone. Later on, when her parents would think back to Casey's high school age, they really had no idea who Casey hung out with, her friends, who she was dating. I mean, nothing. They tried to be involved, but Casey made it impossible for them to be involved because she wouldn't tell them anything, right? Casey would go out with her friends, she would party all night, and she just went through what one would call a wild stage, The adolescent years. Casey was about to graduate high school, and her parents wanted her to celebrate. The light turned off, and her parents, they wanted to celebrate their daughter's graduation. So they made some cards and they invited like a bunch of people over to have a little party for Casey. But literally the day before her graduation, her parents were like, hey, what's going on with your graduation? Where is it at? What time is it at? They're just trying to find information so they can attend her graduation, right? So they call up the school because Casey wasn't giving them any straight answers. So they call up the school and they're informed that Casey wasn't going to be able to graduate, that she was failing most of her classes. Her parents, they literally had no idea. They had no idea that this was going on. And she didn't tell them. And she let them plan this whole party and didn't say, okay, okay. All right. So instead of trying to finish high school, Casey ended up dropping out of high school. And soon after, she got a job working at Universal Studios in the Hard Rock Cafe. Now, after work, she would come home and she would talk to her parents about her coworkers and how her work day was. But overall, she seemed really happy and she seemed to really enjoy her job. In January of 2005, that's when Casey met and fell in love with her boyfriend, Jesse Grund. Now, it just kind of seemed like things were just really good for Casey. She enjoyed her job. She had this new boo thing that she really liked. Things were just looking up. Later that year, again, still 2005, Casey is 19 years old and she becomes pregnant. So she finds out she's pregnant and she's telling her friend that she doesn't want to keep the baby, but she wants to maybe give it up for adoption so she can continue her lifestyle and not have to worry about a kid. But months went by, Casey's still living at home and she doesn't tell her parents what's going on. She's still carrying the baby. And it wasn't until she was 7 months pregnant that Casey finally told her parents that she was 7 months pregnant. Now, Casey's very petite. She's very petite. Okay. Casey said that she was wearing baggy clothes, loose-fitting clothes. She's a petite girl, so it was she wasn't showing too much, but I think at the 7 months mark, it was okay, she couldn't hide it anymore, so she had to tell her parents. She tells them. And she was telling them, I'm thinking about placing the baby up for adoption. But her parents were like, heck no, you are not putting your kid up for adoption. They were just completely outraged that she would even think about doing this. They forbade her from giving the baby up. So August 9th, 2005, Casey Anthony gave birth to her little baby daughter, Kaylee Marie Anthony. Casey, she said that her boyfriend Jesse was Kaylee's father. She said this pretty early on, but who the baby's father was it was still a mystery. Nobody really knew who the father was. There were many theories out there as to who the father could be, but Cindy and George, they never pressed Casey to find out who the father was. Casey at one point told her mother that Kaylee's father was in a terrible car accident and died. It just seemed like you could never get a straight answer from her. Her stories flip-flop and change often. I don't think it really matters who the father was, but just the fact that she lied, I think a lot of people kind of like, I don't know what they were doing. I don't know. This girl's just... You can't trust anything out of her damn mouth. Now, for some reason, the family thought it was best to keep Casey's pregnancy a secret, which is totally fine. Like, you don't have to tell anyone. But... for some reason, they decided not to tell Casey's older brother, Lee, that she was pregnant and expecting a baby until a couple of days before she gave birth. And then when they finally did tell him, he was very upset. He was very angry with the family, and he decided not to even go to the hospital when she did give birth because he was just so mad. So Lee, her brother, he was also living at home. So why they didn't tell him, I don't know. And this whole thing just caused like a major rift in the family. Like, why would you keep this major secret from me? She's my sister. They seemed somewhat close, her and her brother. I don't know the thought process behind that. Couldn't figure out why. Choices were made. So on New Year's Eve, Jesse, Casey's boyfriend and alleged baby's father, asked for her hand in marriage, saying that he wanted all of them, the whole family, to just be together and be a unit, be a family. Casey was excited. She loved him. But I think this is just an observation and an opinion, but I think deep down she knew that he wasn't the father, and she was probably feeling some sort of way. So Casey has her daughter, she's newly engaged, and around this time, Casey enlisted the help of a nanny named Zanny, or Zenaida Fernandez Gonzalez, but she called her Zanny, so she says. When Casey's parents asked her, like, hey, how'd you find this Zanny lady? What a wacky name, Zanny? They didn't say that, but I would say that. They said, okay, how'd you find this Zanny? And Casey told them that it was an IT tech who worked over at Universal Studios named Jeff who introduced her to his ex-girlfriend, Zanny, and he paid her to watch both his son and Kaylee. They're like, okay, that guy's paying for her to watch your kid? Okay. You know, they're just, okay. Which to me would be a red flag because it's like, who do you know who would pay for your childcare? That's not normal. Well, I don't have a kid. I just know childcare is expensive. Anyway, Cindy recalled Kaylee talking about Zanny and her dog, but no one besides Casey had ever seen or met Zanny in the family. You want to talk about suspicious? Okay, so a DNA test was done to determine if Jesse really was the father of Kaylee, and the lie detector test determined Jesse was not the father. Devastating news to Jesse, who still wanted to work it out, but in May of 2006, Jesse broke off their engagement, saying that Casey's behavior was becoming more erratic and she was becoming a different person. So they broke up, and a little bit of time goes on, and Casey is just ready to start dating again. So she starts going out there. She's like, I'm gonna go out and just I just want to dance. So she's going out and partying a lot with her friends. Now, while she's out, that's when she meets this guy named Tony, who was an aspiring DJ. That's gonna work out real well. So the two are dating, and Casey would bring Kaylee over to his apartment that he shared with his roommates, and they would spend a lot of their time there. Casey was still living at home during this time with her parents, and Casey's parents, they helped take care of Kaylee. They gave her her own room, they fed her, they clothed her. They pretty much took care of Kaylee as much as they could. So according to Casey, on June 15th, 2008, there was a heated argument happening within the family. The next morning, Casey left with Kaylee for a work trip to Tampa, Florida. She was angry and she did not want to come back home, so she packed like a bag as if she were going to stay for a while. The one thing we know for sure is on June 16th, 2008, that was the last day that Kaylee was seen alive.